If you spent any amount of time on the alternative and goth Reddit communities or even some of the Facebook groups, you've probably heard a term naturally alternative. What does that even mean? If you're new here, I'm Laura. I'm an alternative makeup and fashion enthusiast. I'm a designer in my day job. Online, I just kind of like to yap about stuff. I like to get all dressed up, and I spend a lot of time online. I'm very, very chronically online. I see a lot of interesting discussions happening online, and I'd like to continue those conversations here. So today we'll be talking about what does it mean to be naturally alternative, and is that even possible? What I've been seeing online is lots of people, especially baby bats or people newer, younger people on the scene, they want a cheat code. They want a way, if you're joining a community, it can be very daunting, especially if there's a lot of research that you're supposed to do, how to dress or look a certain way. You have your creators or celebrities or just people that you look up to, that you want to emulate their style, and you kind of don't know where to start. So you want an easy way to sort of jump right in. And I totally get that, and I want to validate that. That being said, I don't think that there is a cheat code per se to like looking naturally alternative. I don't think that's really a thing. There are things that you can do to kind of like, I guess, jumpstart that. But for me personally, I feel like there is quite a lot of work that goes into, I sort of call it getting into drag. It's like my form of drag almost, but like, there's a lot involved to get dressed up to look like an ideal of what alternative should be. And like, this is a longer conversation about like,
why don't you just, be you?
I'm coming at this from a makeup and fashion perspective. So there is like a lot of work that you need to do for that finished product. But obviously, like, you do you and dress however you want to dress. I feel like that goes without saying, but I'm saying it regardless. When it comes to looking like naturally alternative, a lot of people can't get all decked out the way that they want because of school, because of work, various reasons. Their family doesn't approve, maybe like even like chronic illness. It's hard to do your makeup every day. I totally get that. Those are all like valid reasons. You don't need like an excuse not to paint yourself and wear your 11-inch platforms and stuff like that. I talk a lot about like trying to present yourself externally the way that you feel internally. On off days, days where you're not getting all dressed up, people want sort of like a low effort way to still look alternative. I totally get that. So again, there's no such thing as really looking naturally alternative. I think even when you're not wearing makeup on like sort of, again, like low effort days where you're just sort of like, lounging around in your pajamas, let's say, I think there's still things that you can do maybe to look more alternative or less conventional, if you will. Number one, eyebrows go a huge way to changing the way that your face looks. So you can do a number of things to your eyebrows. I have experimented a lot with my eyebrows over the years, and I have a whole complex around that. But anyways, okay, so my eyebrows right now, this is like, I pluck them a little bit, but this is kind of like naturally what my eyebrows kind of look like. I'm wearing like a eyebrow pomade, but this is kind of like more or less my natural shape. But you can do that. Well, first of all, you can just shave them off completely. That looks very alternative. Not an option for everyone, but just putting that out there. You can also bleach them. Again, not everyone has that option, but it does look a bit edgier. It's not sort of conventionally attractive, if you will, which is very alternative. You can just play with the shape of your eyebrows. Now, some people don't recommend, shaving them off and drawing them on, so you could cancel out your brows and draw them in, so you're not actually touching your brows. But anyways, I'll just show you a couple shapes, and then you can figure out how you want to go about it, whether you want to shave them off and just draw them on, or whether you want to cancel them out and then draw them on after. Straight brows, like very skinny straight brows, look very edgy, very alternative. It's not really a typical shape that people have to their eyebrows. Another thing that you can do is very angular eyebrows, like a very strong arch, or you can just do kind of like I don't even know what to call this, but like where they're sort of like sticking up like that. Then of course piercings and tattoos, if that's something that you can do. Personally, I don't have any tattoos. It's something that I choose not to do. It's not for me. I think they look really great on other people, and it is an instantly recognizable way that like, oh, that person's a little bit alternative, especially if you're covered in tattoos. It looks very alternative. Same thing with piercings. I've got a whole bunch that you probably can't really see because my lights are washing me out, but I've got a whole bunch in my ears and I've got my nose pierced. The more facial piercings you have, the more alternative you look. But not everyone's able to do that, but just sort of things that you can do. So that's kind of like the face. Then clothing wise, baggy clothes tend to look alternative, but you have to kind of choose your materials and your cut of clothes carefully. So something like a big cargo pant or like Jinko jeans. A lot of alternative brands will make their own lines of like sweatpants and stuff like that. Like I think Mary Wyatt has some. I think Blackcraft Cult has some. On the surface, they're just sort of like, basic loungewear, but they've got skulls on them, or they've got that like metal band font where it's like, it looks like chicken scratch. Even when you're sort of on an off day, are still markers that you're a little bit more alternative and edgy. But I will say a caveat with baggy clothes is, especially if you're going super baggy, it doesn't look flattering on everyone. You're probably not looking for something that looks flattering when you're wearing baggy clothes. But like for me personally, in my body type, it just makes me look bigger and kind of like shapeless. So I mean, like, I wear sweatpants when I'm cleaning or, lounging, watching TV, but like, it's not a cute outfit. If you're still like looking to look cute, baggy clothes don't really work for most people unless you're kind of very, very skinny. As like an outfit, if you're just like lounging, like it doesn't really matter. Fabric choices for clothing, if you still want to look like naturally alternative, but you're not getting all decked out. Things like lace, leather, or faux leather, velvet, typically in darker colors, so like black, a dark gray, charcoal, dark red, forest green, things like that. Even navy, potentially darker jewel tones in those fabrics look pretty alternative. Lots of asymmetrical hems, raw edges, rips, things like that. Just naturally look a bit more edgy. As far as prints on fabric, things like checkerboard or even like a gingham or like a small checks, plaid, stripes, whether horizontal or vertical, but often more vertical stripes. Those also tend to look more alternative, or they can be dressed up. And then just kind of like think about what you're wearing. So if you're wearing just like a plain white t-shirt and a basic pair of jeans, like that's not going to read alternative. Versus, let's say if you wear a pair of basic jeans, but you kind of distress them a little bit, maybe you add like little like acid kind of stains, and then you wear, let's say like a checkerboard t-shirt and maybe throw on some Converse, then you're already starting to look a bit more alternative, even if you don't do anything else to your appearance. It's okay if you don't look recognizably alternative all the time. Like I would say most of the time I don't look recognizably alternative. I do have to put in more effort to look alternative. I don't think I look naturally alternative. And that's fine. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, and then hair. This is a huge one. A lot of people sort of see messy, tousled hair as something potentially more alternative, but you sort of have to be careful with that because it could just look messy and greasy and like you haven't washed your hair in a while. So there's a very fine balance that you have to walk. Alternative hairstyles are exactly that, styled. So I'm going to throw up a few examples on screen of alternative hairstyles, but there is a little bit of work that you have to do, but I think they're very forgiving if you don't have a lot of time or energy. So the biggest thing I would say is something like an asymmetrical cut with texture in it. And you can use like a pomade or like a styling gel or something like that, something with a little bit of hold. I would be careful of hairspray because I feel like a lot of hairsprays can kind of like weigh down your hair or just look stringy or greasy. So I would say something that has a little bit of like flexible texture and maybe adds a little bit of volume at the same time if your hair is a little bit thinner. Obviously, unnatural hair colors tend to look alternative, or black hair, especially if it's not your natural hair color. The contrast just reads a little bit more alternative, or that they're taking risks with their appearance. Your haircut, so either something very sharp, like lots of sharp edges, like a blunt bob, let's say, or something short and spiky can read alternative, or something that is unconventional, so like a mullet, let's say, or a wolf cut, or like shaved sides, or an undercut, baby bangs, also like something a little bit outside the norm, a little bit of an indicator that you take risks with your appearance and you're not afraid to express yourself. All right, and then the next one is accessories. I think this is huge. I'm gonna put up an example on screen. This is a dress that I thrifted. Just kind of like a basic spring, summer floral dress. Very cute. I wear this all the time. It's so comfortable. Not alternative looking at all. And then I thought, how can I sort of add a little bit more edge to it? And I added a harness. And I feel like that instantly changes the dynamic of the outfit and makes it a little bit more edgy. It's not something that you would expect. So accessories can really do a lot to dress up a look and just give it a little bit of an edge, even if otherwise it's a bit more mainstream passing. Something like a harness, something like a studded belt, chains, fishnets, adding a choker, sometimes like hair accessories. I really love brooches, especially like safety pin brooches. You can honestly DIY your own, or there's a lot of sellers on, Etsy and stuff that make their own, from something a little bit more simple to something a little bit more complex. And you can put those like on your shirt, on your pants, on your bag. I put them sometimes in a beret. I just like stick them on, and I've got one with like a little chain that dangles, and it just really instantly adds an edge. It's super cute, and it's just a great way to dress up an outfit, so it adds a little bit of personality as well as adding a little bit more of a visible alternative bend to your outfit. And then lastly, nails. I feel like you can kind of go in one of two directions. You could have like short nails and do like a dark nail polish. This one is actually like great for lower maintenance people, because like even if it gets chipped, like I chip my nails all the time, it doesn't matter. It actually adds a bit of a grungy edge to it. Or you can go the opposite direction and do something a little bit more polished, no pun intended, and like put together longer stiletto nails or coffin shaped nails. I would say like the longer the better, kind of the more alternative, unconventional, but like whatever kind of suits your comfort level and your lifestyle. There are tons of options if you don't want to go to a nail salon or can't or whatever. Press-ons are generally a lot cheaper, and there's a ton of cute options as well. So those are just a few tips that I have for ways to look naturally alternative when that isn't really a thing. I would call it almost like more lower maintenance ways to still look alternative on days where you don't want to or can't get all dressed up, which I'm not even super dressed up today. So I hope those tips were helpful. Feel free to comment below do you agree, do you disagree with any of these? Are there any tips that I maybe missed, or any topics that you'd like me to discuss? Feel free to comment below, and I will see you guys next time.